Now we are going to the most interesting part of the event today, the talk to be given by our four teachers, Zen Master Hyung, Zen Master Wukwang, Zen Master Daebong, and Zen Master Bonshin, on the theme of this conference, The Whole World is a Single Flower, Zen Blooms Everywhere. Now, this is a very beautiful notion, but is that a reality? Is that possible? This session will be moderated by NJ Stek Jidokopsanim. NJ is a Polish. He started practicing Zen in 1981 after he met Zen Master Songsan in a Dharma talk in the university where he was studying. In 1998, he received Inka, which is the permission to teach from Zen Master Songsan, and has been teaching Zen since then. He was once the abbot of the Quantum School of Poland and other Zen centers worldwide. He now lives in Korea and is the guiding teacher of Quantum Soul Zen Group and Quantum Daejeon Zen Group. Now, let us put our palms together for NJ Jido Popsanim. NJ, over to you.
Thank you, Xiaosong, and hello everyone. Welcome to our participants from Malaysia and from all over the world. Also a big welcome to the distinguished Zen Masters who will speak tonight. It's a great honor and joy to be a moderator of our first event of the Whole World Single Flower Conference. So let's open our minds and our hearts, and without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Zen Master Bonshin. Zen Master Bonshin is from Poland, and she is the original Zen Master of the Quantum School of Zen in Europe. She began practicing Zen in 1978 when she first met Zen Master Songsan. She received Dharma transmission in 2006 from Zen Master Wukwang, and was guiding teacher of the Warsaw Zen Center and Polish Sangha for many, many years. She's teaching extensively in Europe and worldwide, and I believe right now she's joining us from Borisa Zen Center in the Spanish mountains. So please welcome our first speaker, Zen Master Bonshin.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for this beautiful beginning of our conference. And welcome. It's an honor to speak today at the beginning of Whole World Single Flower Conference. First of all, I would like to thank the Malaysian Sangha for your determination in organizing this event, despite not favorable circumstances. I would also like to express my gratitude to online Sangha for their great effort and hard work. And thank you all for joining. So during our last meeting, the four of us, our head teacher, Zen Master Hyung, had a very good idea to give a speech about 4 parts of a flower: the root, stem, leaves, and petals, so that our Dharma talks would make up a complete Dharma flower. And I will talk about the roots. And we tend to value plants for their top growth, right? It's the part where what we can see and enjoy and appreciate. But lush leaves and beautiful petals all come up from the roots. The roots anchor the plant in place, resisting the forces of wind and running water or mud flow. Without roots, plants would be unable to retrieve water or nutrition from the soil, or even hold themselves upright. So it is a perfect analogy for our own practice and our own growth and our life. We need some sort of rooting system. We call it strong center. My Zen roots began when Zen Master Songsan came to Poland more than 40 years ago. Back then, Poland was a communist country under a strong influence from Soviet Union. And as you can imagine, not a very diverse one, with over 90% of the population being Catholic. But that did not discourage our teacher. When he came for the first time, right away, he wanted to meet Catholic priests, and I couldn't understand why, what for. He never cared to explain any of that. But his point was to make peace and harmony with your environment, to find what unites us instead of what separates us. He would teach monks and nuns saying, and you know this teaching very well, in the Bible, Jesus taught, I am the way, the truth, and life. And in Zen Buddhism, we teach, first, you must discover correct way, truth, and correct life. So when monks heard this teaching, they were very happy because they could relate to this teaching easily. It was the first time that Catholic monastics heard the teaching. After that, he would meet with them actually every time he visited Poland, which was almost every year for a time being. And now they have a monastery where they teach Zen meditation. And at that time, I didn't realize how important it was for the practitioners to have an open relationship with this strong religious environment, as for many of them, these were their roots. So my point is, I guess, we all want to live in harmony, but we don't exactly know how we can achieve that. And we often don't believe that this is even possible. So fortunately, Zen Master Song-san taught us a skillful means and subtle ways on how to do that. Our path has to be based on harmony, mutual acceptance, and understanding. And only then we can serve other people, not only in the Zen environment, not in Zen centers, but everywhere we happen to be. So, what are our Zen rules? And we hear this over and over again. Return to this moment, to your original mind, moment to moment. But what does it actually mean? So here is a little story that connects to that. Once a student traveled with Zen Master, and he would ask him many questions. So finally, they arrived at a waterfall, and the student asked, Master, I want to practice, but I still don't understand. How can I enter this way? Then Zen Master asked, do you hear the waterfall? Yes, I do, replied the student. And Zen Master said, then enter here. As this story shows, if you have a question, then your question will be answered. You just have to listen. Question is what sets everything in motion. And it can be any kind of question. It can be even a very skeptical question. For example, what am I doing here? How this practice is going to help me? How it's going to help my life? So the way does not differentiate between good or bad, and is not dependent on any set of forms or beliefs. Sixth Patriarch said, Zen does not rely on written or spoken word. It does not depend on understanding or not understanding. And as Zen Master Song-san pointed out, return to your before thinking. So if you find this point, that is not dependent on your memory, not dependent on your karma or your thinking, then you can see, hear, taste, smell, think, and act clearly. So Dharma is a way of life, and it affects everything we do. Our job, relationships, future projects. So there is a kongan that we use. Before the donkey has left, the horse has already arrived. The donkey represents our selfish nature and the horse represents our Buddha nature. So it is up to us from one moment to another. What do we choose? Do we put a carrot on the stick for the donkey to chase, stick to our particular perspective? Or do we rather water, feed, and care for the horse? So sometimes when people become discouraged and lose faith, they think this practice is not for me. It is too difficult, too long. In such moments, we need to do something. We need to take initiative, not to fall into despair. Healing or becoming whole can only happen through loving and caring actions. So there is another short story about that. One time during retreat, somebody asked the Master Songsan, how can we save people fighting at war? And as you know, there is always some war somewhere. And that time it was in former Yugoslavia. And Zen Master Songsan answered, this is really important. Just sitting in this Dharma room, I already saved all beings. It means if there is a war inside of you and you are struggling and you feel restless and confused, you cannot save anybody. So this flower with strong roots and stem always turns to the sun naturally, the same way humans turn to light. And meditation brings light to our mind. And often mind light is covered by a cloud of ignorance. But when we are aware of it, it is not a problem. Cloud soon disappears. The problem is when we don't even realize that there is a cloud in the first place. We just don't see it. So in the Diamond Sutra it is said, when you can see the delusion, then you are not deluded. So there's another interesting kongan which connects to that. Sun is shining everywhere, like today, very strong. Why does the cloud obscure it? So it is perfectly fine and natural for a cloud to appear. They are always coming and going with the wind. And we accept that and we live with that. Coming back to this beautiful flower, roots support the stem, and from a strong stem, leaves grow and many colorful petals can bloom. Always interrelate, never in conflict. They never say, I don't like those colors. It's too dark or too bright, or those leaves have not good enough shape. So with our teaching and practice, we aspire to communicate with open mind and heart, without holding to our opinion, on only following the teachings and our own wisdom. Most of you know the teaching well, and we love it. We believe in it. We love to read it and even can teach others, sometimes really well. But the question is, do we live accordingly? So in these times, people are more agitated everywhere in the world. In our centers too. So there are conflicts. Sometimes even anger may appear. Therefore, we need to pay close attention to what we are say and do. Each and every person makes a difference in this world. Each person has some input. We ought to put our great vow into many areas with all our talents and gifts. And this is the time to use them. With practice, we can stay focused, not only on our affairs, but be concerned of the world. So Zen practice is about deep connection, not only with our brothers and sisters, but with the animals, trees, or nature. We ought to reconnect and listen. Listen to the wind, rustling leaves, birds, mountains, and seas. If we only talk to ourselves, and doing so, we break the connection. But if you truly experience this practice, then even if you wander around and get lost, this practice experience will always show you the way back, will guide you to your true original home. And this home is not some kind of nirvana. It is a place where we replenish our strength and vitality to be ready to face whatever appears in our life, to respond to any opportunity and any situation with clarity and empathy. So thank you very much for listening. And I do hope next time we meet in face and we enjoy our company and our together practice. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Zen Master Bonshin. And I would like to introduce our next speaker, Zen Master the Bonk. Zen Master the Bonk is originally from United States, but now he's an original Zen Master for Asia. He was ordained as a monk in 1984 and received Dharma transmission from Zen Master Seung San in 1999. He is a guiding teacher of International Zen Center, Musangsa, in South Korea. And lately his teaching has been published as a book with the title, Where is the Master Now?, which is available right now in English and Korean. So please welcome our next speaker, Zen Master The Bonk from Musangsa, South Korea.
Hello, everyone, wherever you are, whatever time of day it happens to be for you. And I'd also like to thank everyone at particularly Hobang Temple, but actually at many places around the world for all the work, a tremendous amount of work, so that we can connect through this internet medium. Everybody right now, wherever you are, just sit up straight. Whether you're sitting on the floor or in a chair, just sit up straight and relax and breathe in, breathe out. Be aware of what it feels like for this air to come in and come out. And as soon as we pay attention to our breath, that brings us back to this present moment. And certainly, before your habit kicks in, whatever your energy habit is, with the first few breaths, you right away feel more centered. When you have this center energy, you can deal more skillfully with whatever appears, whether it's coming feelings from and thinking from inside or some situation outside. So Chinese people know, they talk about dantian, Korean people tanjun, our body's original energy center, 2 centimeters, 1 inch below our navel. When we're inside our mother, everything coming and going here. Then when we're born, soon our energy center moves here. Everybody's is the same. Then around 1 or 2 years old, energy center moves here. Opposite thinking, me, you, good, bad, I like, I don't like, I want, I don't want. I'm right, you're wrong. You're right, I'm wrong. All kinds of opposite thinking, and then many kinds of suffering appear. When we slowly breathe in, breathe out, already returning to our center. So very important, our practice, we say, is the stem of our flower. If the stem is strong, then a flower can stand up, the nutrients go up and down very smoothly, and the flower can adjust to any kind of thing in the environment. If your energy is very high, many thinking, many emotion, easy to get knocked over. But if your energy is low, even if some situation appears, knock you over, you can come back quickly. So really at the heart of any kind of action in the world is our own training and practice. Great leaders who have really led successful social movements all had a core of a very strong spiritual practice, regardless of which religion it comes from. They have some interior reflection so they can see themselves clearly and they can be centered when dealing with this world. This is very important. Buddha said, the greatest enemy is an untrained mind. And he said, the greatest friend is a trained mind. Training's not so difficult. Just to pay attention to your breath right away. And as Bonshin Zen Master said, then let a big question appear. What is this? What am I? That's really the heart of Buddha's practice and Buddha's teaching. So in this particular way, I see the stem of a flower and as our practice, our effort to train ourselves to be aware of ourselves, our body, our thinking, our mind. As soon as you return to this moment, whatever technique you use, it settles you. For a moment, you can have a clarity, awareness, even peace. Then our speech and our actions will more naturally reflect the situation with wisdom and compassion. We can all, and I'm sure we all do, want to do many things to help this world. But if we don't know how to take care of our own body, mind, clearly become centered, take away our strong ideas, then what do they say? It's like cooking rice and sand together, not so delicious. But if we make a daily practice strong, if you have one, do it. If you don't, go to a temple, go to a Zen center, learn how to practice. Then once we get it inside, even our everyday life situations, we can turn into practice. Driving your car, washing your dishes, taking care of your family, dealing with whatever situation comes. You can turn into practice. So a great master said, being able to turn appearance into the path. It's a great skill and everybody can learn it. We just have to make an effort and get some instruction. So if we really want to help this world, just like a flower, make your stem strong. And then the roots and the leaves and the flower all connect and bring benefit. Our original nature's always clear like space. Anyone who is sat or chanted or bowed, know that while you're doing it, many thinking, many feelings come and go. But this body, our thinking and our feelings are just like the weather. Our true nature's like the sky, completely clear and endless. then the rest of this is coming and going. We don't hate the weather, and it's going to change in a little while anyway. But if we develop some practice where every day we're returning or making the effort to ask, what is this? What is going on now? What am I? Then we begin to connect with this vastness, which is our original nature. Ultimately, practice isn't just sitting, bowing, chanting, but how do we keep our mind each moment? But by doing these things every day, we can begin to see our habits. We can begin to see where our attention goes, and we can get control over it and choose, and then choose wisely so that we become connected with the situation we're in, and we function with compassion and wisdom that doesn't come from an idea, but comes from our experience of the connection of everyone. So I hope we make our stem strong. Actually, our roots are leaves and flowers, and then we can find something inside that benefits us and benefits everybody, everywhere we go, anytime. Then Zen is blooming everywhere. Just being nice to somebody when you're buying something from them, being aware of other people, and having concern for the welfare of others in the world. If we can share that, do that ourselves and share it, then we're blooming everywhere. So I look forward to when we can meet again online, in person, mind to mind, and let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Zen Master De Bong. And let me introduce our next speaker from the United States, New York, Zen Master Wukwang, Richard Strobe. He is a regional Zen Master for both Americas. He began practicing in 1975 and received Dharma transmission from Zen Master Seung San in 1993. He has a private practice in Gestalt psychotherapy and has written 3 books in Zen, about Zen. One, Open Mouth, Already a Mistake, Don't Know Mind, The Spirit of Korean Zen, and Elegant Failure, The Guide to Zen Kongan. So please welcome our next speaker, Zen Master Wukwang from New York.
Thank you, Anjay. And I also want to express my gratitude to all of you who have come to the conference and all of you who spent so much time and energy in organizing this conference. When I watched the preliminary part and the scenery of Malaysia, I wished that we could have been there in person, but we will make do with what we have. So following this image or metaphor of the flower, the next part after the stem is the leaves. And to practice the idea of the whole world as a single flower, Zen blooms everywhere, not just having a good idea or a good feeling about it, but actually to practice it requires a certain openness like the leaves of a flower have. That openness for the flower is to turn towards the light and absorb the light. And so a certain openness is required to practice this whole world as a single flower, Zen blooming everywhere. When I think about this, 2 teachings appeared for me when I thought of it in weeks prior to this. One was a teaching by Zen Master Linchi, who was a great Zen master who lived during the Tang Dynasty period in China. And the other was a particular chapter in the Lotus Sutra. So I'll say a little bit about each one. Zen Master Linchi one time taught the assembly, and he said, your true master, your true teacher is always just in front of you. But to be able to recognize that our true teacher is always just in front of us requires a certain kind of listening and looking clearly. There used to be a sign at railroad crossings in the United States. It would say, stop, look, and listen. And so to recognize your true teacher is in front of you, you have to stop, look, and listen. In some monastic training, they have what's sometimes referred to as following the rule of obedience. And the rule of obedience means to be able to listen to the instructions of your training monk or nun and to follow them without question. And the actual root of the word obedience in English comes from a Latin root, which means to listen, to hear. And so the practice of obedience in monks' training is not just to become a servant to the training monk, but to really develop the skill to listen to the true message that is being delivered, rather than listening to whatever we hold and say to ourselves most of the time, our concepts, opinions, our wants and needs. Once when I was in Korea at one of these Whole World's a Single Flower conferences, a small group of us met a Canadian nun who had been training in Korea. She went to Korea originally, I think, to teach English, and then got enamored of Buddhism and became a nun there herself. And she was describing to us what her initial training as a monastic had been. And she said the nun who was training her would tell her to do things and tell her not to do certain things, and then would often criticize her for what she had done or what she hadn't done. And she would sometimes, resorting to her habitual ideas, try to defend herself or explain herself. And as she would get a sentence or two out, the training nun would just say, "Why are you still talking?" So often we're talking internally and not really listening to the true message that's being delivered at that time. It's important not to hold our own ideas and to be open to listening to the teaching that we are encountering moment by moment through our circumstances in the world. Here's another example of this same kind of obedience training that was given to me. So it's not just for nuns and monks. When I had been a student of Zen Master Sungsan's for a while, and he saw that I was serious, he said to me one day, he looked at my face, and I had a beard then just as I have now, and he said, "Cut beard is necessary." So, many times we become attached to our appearance and build a kind of persona around certain things. So he said, cutting your beard is necessary. He was testing how attached I was to it. So I said to him, "Well, Zen Master, I can do that, but I should tell you that I grew this beard because when I started practicing psychotherapy, someone told me, your face looks very, very young." I have a kind of baby face. And if someone is coming to you for psychotherapy and they look at you and you look like you're about 16 years old, they're not going to really believe in you. So why don't you grow a beard and you'll look a little older, and that'll help you in your psychotherapy practice, helping other people. So when Zen Master Sungsan heard that, he said, "Oh, that beard is not for you, that's a beard for all people, bodhisattva beard. So cutting is not necessary. And after that, he never mentioned it again, and I never cut my beard. So in any case, listening and perceiving clearly is what's necessary to receive teaching moment by moment from our circumstances and situation. In the Lotus Sutra, the Lotus Sutra is a very vast visionary teaching. It's like being in another universe, not our everyday world here on planet Earth. In the Lotus Sutra, Buddhas are appearing in the sky and staying there and conversing with Shakyamuni Buddha, who is then sitting on Vulture Peak to give teaching. And bodhisattvas, great advanced practitioners, are springing up from the earth, thousands of them all of a sudden. And the Buddha says, these are all my students. But he could never have taught all those students in one lifetime. And in another section of the Lotus Sutra, a young dragon woman, young dragon girl, 8 years old, snaps her fingers and instantly becomes a Buddha. This is the usual kind of imagery that's used in the Lotus Sutra. And it's as fantastic as it is, it's suggestive of practice in certain ways. But there's one chapter in the Lotus Sutra that is not like this at all. It's very down to earth and has a different tone. And this chapter is called The Bodhisattva Never Despise. So it begins by the Buddha is having a conversation with a great celestial bodhisattva who has come from somewhere else in the cosmos to visit the Buddha. And the Buddha says to this man, greatly accomplished, long time ago, millions upon millions of years ago, there was another Buddha who taught. And after he had expressed his teaching, he passed away. And after some time, the purity of his teaching began to degrade. And so people who were following the Buddha's teaching after his death took it superficially and became rather arrogant about what they thought they knew and what they thought they had attained. At that time, there was one practicing person who his practice was like this. He never sat meditation, never did hundreds of prostrations, never chanted, never studied the sutras, none of these things. But whenever someone would approach him, he would immediately bow to that person and say, I dare not think ill of you. I dare not despise you because you will become Buddha. So repeatedly, this was his practice. Anytime he encountered another person, I dare not think ill of you. I dare not speak ill of you. I dare not despise you. You will become Buddha. And the people of that time, who were somewhat arrogant, thought that he was more arrogant than them and had no use for him and said, who is this fool who thinks that he can predict Buddhahood to all of us? And they began to throw stones at him whenever he would approach and drive him away with sticks. But he would just back up to a safe distance and yell out the same thing. I dare not think ill of you. I dare not despise you because you are to become Buddha. So over and over again, this was his practice. And when he was about to die, suddenly he heard in his mind the essence of the teaching of the Lotus Sutra, and his mind became very clear, and he continued to live for a long time and teach the essence of the teaching to many, many people. So the Buddha has told this story about never despise to this bodhisattva greatly accomplished. And then he says to greatly accomplished, do you know who that bodhisattva never despise was and is? I myself was never despised in a former life. And do you know who all these people here who have come to Vulture Peak to hear the teaching, do you know who they are? They are the arrogant people who threw sticks and stones at me and drove me away. But over a long period of time, they have come to recognize the true teaching, and we are all here together. Now, that means that according to the teaching of a single flower, the whole world is a single flower, and the Lotus Sutra, that 10,000 years is 1 second, and 1 second is 10,000 years. And so we are all, moment by moment, sitting with the Buddha and part of the assembly. And we need to encourage ourselves to have the kind of sincerity and openness in our practice to see that whatever is coming at us is the expression of Buddha nature and our Buddha nature. And we need to honor that and encourage that both in ourselves and in everyone else. Then Zen blooms everywhere is a possibility. So I hope that we all continue to do that over and over again. And as many times as we close up and retreat, that we open again like the leaves do. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Zen Master Wukwang. And let me introduce our final speaker, Zen Master Hyung. Zen Master Hyung is from United States, right now residing in Bay Area, West Coast. And she is a school Zen Master of entire International Quantum School of Zen. And she is practicing since 1972 when she was one of the first Zen Master Sung-san students in America. And she also helped to found Providence Zen Center, our first head temple in the United States. And she was living there for 17 years and doing lots of different administrative jobs. And she received transmission from Zen Master Sung-san in 1992. And also her life, she was a lifelong nurse in hospice care by profession. So welcome our head Zen Master, and please, Zen Master Hyung, give us your talk.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for arriving at our conference. I think when we first realized that we couldn't meet in person, I, for one, had a pretty bad attitude about having to do it on Zoom. I didn't think it would be very interesting, but now I think it's very interesting. And I really love the first 3 speeches very much, and I love the video of Malaysia and all the shots of the different teachers that have visited there. I want to thank Hyung Temple very much for all the work they've done. I went there last year to help with the preparation for this conference when we didn't know about the virus, and I also went to Singapore because they were going to also be 50%, a big part of this conference. And it was, there was so much genuine sincerity in both of those sanghas to want to share Zen Master Sung-san's teaching, to want to just include everyone. That it was, I got to go to all the venues that we were going to visit and to check them out. And I mean, it was going to be something really, some great places. And anyway, here we are. And this flower concept, Zen Master Sung-san, well, Mangang Sanim originally wrote that calligraphy after World War II. The whole world is a single flower. And you imagine what Korea had been through all this for centuries, really. Korea, because of being a peninsula perhaps and being very gentle, they never attacked anybody, but they were always getting invaded and having problems with China, you know, Japan, and, you know. So anyway, imagine after all of that suffering, Mongang Tserim writes, the whole world is a single flower. And what a beautiful thing that came out of his practice, out of his roots, his stem, his leaves, and he flowered into being a great bodhisattva. You know, when I first got interested in Zen, I was very interested in Zen when I was in my early 20s, and I luckily met Zen Master Sung-Song when I was 24. And even though I was young, I had already read these books, and I had ideas about kind of rooting myself on a cushion, having the teacher teach me. And I like discipline. I was raised in a military family, so I really liked the idea of eat time eat, sit time sit, walk time walk, together action. And Zen Master Sung-Song was teaching all of that, and we had that organization. But it was like a little bit more than I had signed up for, because right away, you know, we're hosting these guests for the Dharma talks, and I was living at the Zen Center, and he, you know, I was making, like, I used to make a lot of chapatis, like cookies and chapatis to give to the guests, and I was cleaning up the kitchen and making the tea. I was a housemaster then. And then one day he came into the kitchen while the guests were out there with him at the table where they were having the tea and cookies. And he came in and kind of a little bit angry. He said, you got to come out and talk to the guests. And I went, I'm doing the dishes. And he said, we can do that later. You're the host. I went, I'm the host. I don't want to be the host. I want to just do the dishes. I don't like people. I was shy, really. It's not like I didn't like people. I was already a nurse. I love people, but I'm shy. I don't want to be a host. I want to be a Zen student. I want to do the dishes, you know. No, get out there, you know. And then so I went out begrudgingly, and then he kind of pulls on my sleeve and said, smile. You have to smile. And I'm like, he said, that makes people feel good when you smile. And he said, you got to clean up this is not all in one night. Then he told me to, you know, cut my hair, and it was really scraggly. It was very long and not dirty, but I didn't comb it very much, so it didn't look so great. And he said, you've got to get better clothes. And I said, what? Why do I need good clothes? I said, that's all name and form. I don't want good clothes. He said, for other people. You want the good clothes for other people, not about you. And so that was my first huge lesson from him. I mean, the big lessons about only go straight, don't know, what is this, what am I? Wonderful and huge and very helpful in my everyday life. But these other things about really, how are you going to bloom? How are you going to be Kwanseum Boso? He said, do you think Kwanseum Boso wore those beautiful clothes for him or herself? That was for other people. All of that jewelry, all the draping, everybody feels good when someone's smiling and they're neat and clean and they're dressed nicely. He had to, I was such a slob. I was just I still am, but I'm a little bit better than I was. To clean up my act, not for me, to realize that. Then he was talking about my parents. He said, your parents eat meat, right? Because I wasn't, at that time, I was vegan. I didn't eat eggs or cheese, So I'd go to their house. It was very unpleasant for them because at least they could give me an omelet if I was a vegetarian. No, I don't eat cheese. I don't eat eggs, and anyway, he said, you go over to your parents' house, and if they give you chicken, you eat your chicken. I said, I haven't eaten chicken in 4 years. You haven't eaten chicken? It's not about you. It's about how can you make a pleasant visit with your parents? How can you honor them, respect them, show them your love? So that was drilling that in. Not what I expected from a Zen master at all. I wanted to pass those koans and learn how to keep my mind still and have an organized home that I lived in. And it was a challenge. He was a person who stretched things out. So another thing he said quite often is, you have to believe in yourself. And I thought we're supposed to have no self. Believe in yourself. And what are you? And so again, that's such a beautiful thing to go in and practice. And thoughts come up, our doubts come up, our fears come up, our ideas come up, our likes, our dislikes come up. Just to learn to say, well, who's feeling fearful? What are you? Who thought that? What is this? And to begin, as Richard said, to listen. So listen to yourself also. Listen to your questions. Listen to your doubts, your fears. What is this? So you become the mother of your fears. Your great mind, your wide mind, listens to anything that might be needing to digest. And that, when you start digesting and trusting the listening aspect of our practice, you begin to believe in that process, which is yourself. That's yourself. Your true self is listening and paying attention and questioning. And that's what we teach. This whole koan system that we use. What's the first thing we teach is primary point, before thinking. So can you trust that? Can you trust that you can hear the question of the koan? Just that mind not knowing. And from there, because you've been listening to yourself, from the bottom up, from your gut, comes the intuitive answer. It might take 6 months or 2 years or a week. It doesn't matter. But if you listen and just come from not knowing, the truth appears. So that's pretty fantastic. So when we're learning about ourselves and listening and paying attention, we don't just see our fears and our doubts. We see our potential. We see what we are leaning towards. What am I? What am I? I always wanted to be a nurse. Since I was a little kid, like 5 years old, I want to be a nurse. And so I stuck with that. I always wanted to be a nurse. It's not so great. I mean, it's not like the most famous profession in the world, but that's what I was. I was a nurse. And so then to see that the Zen practice totally integrated into the nursing, because I leaned towards that, that's what I wanted to do well. Then, of course, as a nurse, I was listening, paying attention. What is this? It doesn't matter what you're doing, what profession you have. If you're listening, leaning into your profession, wanting to do that, then there's peace, there's harmony, there's the wars could stop. The wars could stop. I noticed, like with this pandemic, that we have the United States isn't rattling its swords as much. I mean, you don't hear that much. I don't know what's going on out there. I really don't. They only tell you so much, but it feels like people are just trying to survive. Well, we're not going to do the wars right now. We're too busy trying to survive. Who knows? It's just the human being is the number one, as San Sanim always said, bad animal. It's too confusing. And that's why I think all of us who are listening today, who are attending this thing, want to get to know what's going on and what am I. I just finished with another wonderful teaching that Zen Master Sung San. I'm talking about him particularly because this is August is when we usually have a Founders Day ceremony, and we celebrate the gift that he gave us for starting this school. And so I wanted to talk about stories about him today. We were listening to a Dharma talk with him at the Providence Zen Center it was in the 80s. And there was a lot of saber rattling in Russia and the United States. It was called the Cold War. And it was a lot of fear about the atomic energy and atomic bombs, and talk about it. I mean, I read yesterday in the paper that North Korea has atomic submarines now or something. They might come to the United States, It's always something, always something. So at this time, the atomic bomb was going to come. Sansanim said, somebody asked him, well, what can we do about these atomic bombs? And he said, oh, well, I have a great idea. He said, see, we were in Cumberland, Rhode Island, and it's about 15 miles away from Providence, you know. And he said, if the bomb hits Providence, we'll just have time to run out to the pasture and say, hello, just greet the bomb. He said, because you are the bomb. You made that bomb. You made everything, your anger, your desire, your ignorance, your tethering to your idea of self and other. He said, so greet it. Greet your demons. Greet your punishment, whatever you want to call it. Don't be afraid. Say hello to it. And so, as I was saying earlier, when we're meditating, let's listen to ourselves too. Listen to, like, I don't know if I can do this. Then you ask yourself, who doesn't know they can do this? What are you? And that is a brilliant question, because then the mind is looking at the mind. There's this, don't know. So again, thank you so much, the Malaysian Sangha for hosting this. And thank you all for coming. And as everybody else has said, I hope we can get physically together again, but this is better than nothing. So thank you.
Thank you, Zen Master Songhyang, and thank you all the Zen Masters for your great talks. So I would like to ask Zen Master Songhyang to lead us with 4 great vows. So let's put the hands in Hapchang, and following Zen Master Songhyang, let's recite 4 great vows.
Sentient beings are numberless. We vow to save them all. Delusions are endless. We vow to cut through them all. The teachings are infinite. We vow to learn them all. The Buddha way is inconceivable. We vow to attain it.